Welcome. This is the Kiali version 1.56 Sprint 78 demo and community meeting. We're just going to go through a few of the accomplishments that we've had over the last 3 weeks, and then we'll have time for any Q&A or community topics that people want to talk about. We'll record at the beginning, the demo part, and then we'll turn off recording if anyone wants to have open discussion at the end. So let's get started. Pretty much just said all that. Short summary of Sprint 78. I can tell you that we've been doing a little bit of an investment in this sprint so that we have a few things to show. We've also got a lot in the pipeline coming up, but you can see in this chart at the bottom, I don't know if you can quite tell, it's broken down by repository, obviously, and typically the most activity is in the Kiali repository, which is the UI and the server code. But you'll also see on the tail here on the right side, the Kiali Openshift service mesh plugin. This is a new repository where we've got some activity for work where we're integrating with the Openshift console to get Kiali features into that. If you happen to be on that platform, it's going to be a nice enhancement. And let's get right into the highlights for the sprint. This is something that Leandro's been working on. Leandro couldn't make it today, so I'll just talk through it a little bit. But we are working on being able to reflect in a much more robust way control plane status on the overview page. So if you're familiar with the overview page in Kiali, it's basically got a card view typically for every namespace that's being managed. And now we've got one that's labeled as the control plane, and it's going to show you a very quick summary of what's happening with Istio itself. One of the things that we're trying to do is to reflect memory and CPU together in a combined chart. That's on its way and should be in the next sprint. A couple other nice little tweaks that Leandro's been working on that particular page as well. So looking forward to enhancements in the overview page. We've also got some nice new support for Istio configurations, and I'm going to hand this one over to Josune.
Thanks, Jay. So yes, in this version we have included support for two new types of Istio objects that are the WASP plugins and the telemetry. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment, and you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So to put a bit more of a context, Kiali provides a page to visualize these Istio configuration objects that are the features that Istio provides to configure the service mesh, such as, for example, traffic management, objects like gateways or virtual services, or security objects like, for example, peer authentication or authorization policies. And for visualizing these configurations objects, we can filter, for example, by namespace. We can see here, also by Istio type. In this case, we can see how the new types were added, the WASP plugin and the telemetry. We can also filter them by Istio name, and also for config, where we can see, for example, quickly check for the configurations that are not valid. And Kiali also provides the ability to edit each configuration and also adds a semantic validation for some of these Istio resources. And we can have a look, for example, at this WASP plugin object and OpenID Connect. This is part of the extensions API, and a WASP plugin let us extend the functionality of the Istio proxy with WebAssembly, also called WASP filters. We can see the YAML file and edit it online, and in this case, as this is not in the scope of this issue, for this object, no additional validations are provided. For the other side, we have this example with telemetry. We have created a telemetry just for the book info namespace. This one. Well, a telemetry object allows us to configure how the telemetry is going to be generated, and we can apply the configuration to the whole mesh or filter, for example, by namespace, or in this case, by workload. We are filtering, in that case, for service. And we can see a simple example where we can disable telemetry for the service details in the namespace book info. And well, to finalize, just to mention that for this development, some changes in the operator and also then the help chunks were required to add additional cluster permissions into the API groups, the telemetry Istio.io and the extensions Istio.io. And that's it.
Excellent. Thanks, Jasuni. Let me get back to main presentation. Yeah, so these are just nice additions as Kiali continues to expand into covering Istio new config and trying to be as complete as possible in what we handle with regards to the Istio objects. All right, let's keep going. Cluster scoped caching. So if you've been following these meetings and these sprints for the last several sprints, you know that we continue to work on scalability and performance. Basically understanding that people are moving more and more Istio into production, and we're trying to scale with them. This is something that Nick's been working on. Nick, do you want to talk through this slide?
Sure. Yeah, it definitely falls in the theme of scalability. Hopefully most users will see a benefit. The way that Kiali currently works is that it creates a watch per namespace for all of the Kubernetes objects that it cares about, and even when it has cluster scope permissions. So this is an improvement on that, and that it'll only create one single cluster-wide watch per object that it cares about. So most people should just see reduced memory usage, reduced load on the API server, especially if you've got a cluster with a lot of namespaces that Kiali is watching. So it should just be a nice performance improvement. This is a WIP. It's probably work in progress. It's probably going to make it into the next sprint, but talking about it here.
All right, thank you. Again, more work in progress, something that should be coming out with a first version in the next sprint. This is a particular enhancement to our console plugin for Openshift. This is Hike, this is yours, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, Jay. Sure, thank you. Actually we have a service mesh console plugin integrated into Openshift console, which is dev preview only for now, and work there is still in progress. I can share my screen.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So, in the can you see it?
Yes. Go ahead.
So there is a service mesh section here, and it comes with several menu items. First is the overview, which is basically integrated the Kiali overview page here, showing the overview of all namespaces. Then we have a graph here. Again, it's integrated the Kiali graph page. But also we have got here Istio configs, which is a native page directly using the list of the Istio configurations directly calling to Kubernetes API. But it also integrates the Kiali backend here for this configuration section, where for each configuration the Kiali validation results are shown, whether it is valid warning or contains an error. And there is ongoing task here to integrate service mesh tab into the configuration details, which basically will contain the overview of the validation and the references which Kiali is doing for this particular Istio configuration. And this is, as Jay said, is a work in progress and will be released with the next release. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Heike. Yeah, so I mean that for people that are running Istio or Openshift Service Mesh on Openshift, you're going to have a pretty rich integration coming soon, and that's a nice peek into it. So if you missed that, that was actually looking not at Kiali, but at the Openshift console, and it'll be targeted at Openshift 4.10 or higher. Let me reshare again the presentation. All right, let's keep going. A couple more just notable fixes and enhancements that we wanted to talk about. We've made some security context changes to basically increase or lock down security a bit more. If anyone's been familiar with the query scope configuration that we had for Prometheus, this is a way to allow you to store multiple clusters worth of metric data into a single Prometheus and then be able to query against it. We now added that support for Jaeger traces, so you could potentially put multiple clusters worth of Jaeger trace into one repository and then be able to query it for a particular Kiali. And Jasuni has been busy. She also worked on something that's been asked for quite a while now, which is an improvement in our service account token refresh policies. And that should hopefully make people happy as well. Before I go to Sprint 79 preview, did I miss anything? Does anyone have anything they wanted to add? Speak now if you do. All right, and I would mention actually that Istio 1.15 just went out a couple of days ago, and that is, we've got Kiali version 1.55 associated with that as the add-on for the brand new version of Istio. Just a quick talk about where we're going, although I think a lot of it was already answered during that presentation as we showed you a variety of work in progress. This is a clip from our project board in GitHub, which you can always get to by just going to GitHub Kiali, and the Kiali project, and then going into projects and taking a look at what we're tracking. You can see we've still got a few things in progress for this sprint, which most of those, if not all of them, will carry to the next sprint, and a variety of backlog items that are on tap for being added to the next sprint as well. That is it for this demonstration. We can stop the recording now. Thank you for attending, and always, if you have any questions, you can find us on Istio Slack, the Kiali channel. Come visit. And after the recording stops, we can have any discussion that people would like to bring up. We'll stop the sharing.